Hi guys, it's Movie Recapped Queen, and today I will recapping Resident Alien Season 1. An alien spacecraft is struck by lightning and crash lands near the rural town of Patience, Colorado. Its pilot, whose real name is unpronounceable by humans, was on a mission to wipe out human life on Earth. Stranded, he must blend in by assuming human form and the identity of Dr. Harry Vanderspiegel, whom he killed upon encountering. For months, Harry has been searching the mountains for his device that will wipe out humanity and fishing the lake for Dr. Vanderspiegel's corpse. Harry is asked by Sheriff Mike and Deputy Liv to examine the body of Sam Hodges, the town doctor, and his behavior is off-putting but accepted. He even takes on the doctor's job with help from the head nurse Asta Twelvetrees, but he learns his true identity can be seen by Max, Mayor Ben Hawthorne's young son. After drinking heavily in order to fit in, Harry attempts unsuccessfully to kill Max. The next day, Harry rescues Asta from her abusive ex-husband Jimmy while they are moving her things out of his house, and Asta confides in Harry that she gave up her and Jimmy's child for adoption when she was 16. Originally attributing Sam's death to suicide, Harry re-examines the body at the funeral and concludes he was poisoned. Harry confides in Asta that one of the mourners must be the killer. Beginning his first shift as the new town doctor, Harry discovers his first patient is Max. Max runs screaming out of the clinic after Harry tries to behead him with a bone saw. With encouragement from Liv, Max distributes hand-drawn posters of Harry's alien form, and Harry ponders ways to kill him. Darcy Bloom, the town bartender, goes on a date with Harry and describes the accident that ended her skiing career. Inspired, Harry cuts the brakes on Max's bicycle, but the resulting accident only causes a wound requiring stitches on Max's arm. Harry and Max verbally spar during the procedure. With help from her father Dan, Asta comes to terms with Sam's death. Feeling homesick, Harry starts gathering supplies to repair his ship, including mining tellurium, which has levitation properties. Meanwhile, a man falls from a snowy cliff while taking a selfie but is suspended by an unseen force mid-fall. He is later discovered by Lisa Casper and David Logan, still suspended and frozen to death above what appears to be a piece of Harry's crashed ship. When a fisherman finds the real Harry's foot in the lake, Harry submits a baby's foreskin as a skin sample to avoid a DNA match. While the authorities scour the lake for the rest of the corpse, Harry hides it in his freezer after it washes up on the shore. Meanwhile, Ben's wife Kate struggles to figure out what to do about Max's extraterrestrial claims, which no one believes except for his classmate Sahar. Asta and Darcy attend what turns out to be a high school party, where Asta discovers one of Sam's prescription pads was stolen and used to sell drugs to students. She finds part-time clinic employee Jay semi-conscious at the party and drops her off home, and a flashback reveals Jay was the baby she gave away. Darcy flirts at Harry, who is oblivious. Lisa and David chat with a cowboy who witnessed Harry in his alien form months ago, and Lisa murders him after learning that he is planning on publishing a book about it. Ben and Kate invite Harry to dinner to convince Max that he is normal. Unfortunately, Harry invites Darcy, who gets drunk and discusses her childhood romance with Ben. As they dine, Sahar steals Harry's house keys and has copies made. Liv vents her professional frustrations to Darcy, who encourages her to stand up to Mike. Harry meets Asta's family and blurts out that Jay is the daughter she gave up for adoption. Despite Asta's anguish, this news brings her and Dan closer together. Max and Sahar break into Harry's cabin but are knocked unconscious by alien technology, and Harry discovers them. As he is carrying them out of the cabin, the real Harry's wife Isabel suddenly appears. A flashback reveals how the real Harry met his wife Isabel at an art exhibition. After Harry sneaks Max and Sahar back into their homes, he signs papers to divorce Isabel, who is hurt and baffled by his behavior. Darcy and Isabel share their romantic woes, not realizing they are talking about the same man. When Ben and Kate learn Max broke into Harry's cabin, Harry encourages them to send Max to an out-of-state institution. However, Sahar convinces Harry and Max to agree to a truce. Jay discovers Asta as her mother and quits the clinic. Harry gradually warms to Isabel. Mike receives toxicology results that prove Sam was poisoned. Harry becomes jealous upon meeting Ethan Stone, the handsome and virtuous new town doctor, until he dislocates Ethan's shoulder while arm wrestling. Harry repeatedly drugs Isabel unconscious so he can search for his device. He tells Mike about the stolen prescription pad, and Liv remains on the ball with the investigation while Mike makes a fool of himself grilling a teenage suspect. During a girls' bowling night, Asta accuses Jimmy of stealing the prescription pads. A flashback reveals the story of General Eleanor Wright, who saw a UFO when she was a child. 50 years later, after Harry's spaceship blipped on military surveillance, Wright recruited Lisa and David for a covert investigation which eventually leads them to Harry's invisible spaceship. The spaceship is taken to a military bunker, and they wait for him to return. Just as Harry realizes his ship is missing, a vehicle bears down on him. The driver is revealed to be Isabel, who has discovered that Harry has been drugging her. Realizing they are being watched, Harry loudly says he needed space from her and throws off Lisa and David. Furious, Isabel returns to New York. This, the loss of his job, and the loss of his spaceship drives Harry into depression. In a drug and alcohol-induced blackout, Harry dreams the real Harry's corpse attacks him for killing him and taunts him for failing in his mission. To cheer up Harry, Asta and Darcy get him high, and he ends up telepathically conversing with an octopus cousin in a tank at a Japanese restaurant. Jimmy leads Mike and Liv to the stolen prescription pads and the high school janitor who was selling them, but when Mike fails to acknowledge Liv's role in single-handedly apprehending the culprit, she tells him off and quits. Harry tells Ben and Kate that he misdiagnosed Max, and they decide not to send him away. In return, Max uses his ability to see the green glow emitted by Harry's device to locate it on a glacier. When Harry reaches it, his ship activates, and David pinpoints Harry's location. Fearing for Harry's safety, Asta and Darcy arrive on the glacier, and the ground gives way beneath their feet. Darcy is knocked unconscious as Asta and Harry find themselves deep in a crevasse of the glacier. Harry's leg is wounded, making him unable to conceal his identity, but Asta nobly steps up to tend to his medical needs and search for his lost device, which Harry says is a radio. Meanwhile, Ben on Mike's advice tries to be more assertive on his anniversary, but Kate is less than impressed. Lisa and David enter town to find the alien and discover one of Max's posters. Darcy recovers and pulls Harry and Asta out of the crevasse, but Asta abandons her at the hospital and drives Harry to Dan's diner. Harry's wound is infected, and he resigns himself to death until Asta reveals she found his device, and he resolves to complete his mission as Dan amputates his leg. As Harry's leg regenerates, he discovers that his device is broken. In need of a metal used to make trackers that the gray aliens implant in human abductees, he and Asta visit an alien experiencer convention. After several experiencers share their harrowing stories, Asta goes on stage and shares her positive experience, though another attendee later warns her that her alien might be a Christopher Columbus. After Harry nearly removes a BB pellet from a phony experiencer, he acquires a tracker from alien hunter Peter Bach, who is also able to see through Harry's genetic cloak and whose unborn son was abducted by gray aliens 30 years prior. Meanwhile, David and Lisa pose as a couple and have dinner with the Hawthorns to get closer to Max. Using Liv's murder board, Mike arrests Abigail Hodges, Sam's widow, who had been having an affair and, as a beautician, had access to botulinum toxins used for Botox injections. He swallows his pride and, during karaoke, invites Liv back onto the force. Troubled by Asta's behavior and absence, Darcy breaks into Harry's cabin and discovers the corpse of the real Dr. Vanderspiegel. In a flashback, the real Harry poisons Sam's insulin hours before being killed by Harry himself. Darcy tells Mike and Liv about the real Harry's corpse, but Harry has already hidden it in the cabin's loft. Liv then finds one of the real Harry's boots on the lake shore, leading to Harry becoming a person of interest. With his device operational again, Harry hesitates to activate it, visiting a pizzeria and placing a bulk order. He imagines another conversation with the corpse, who taunts him about forming emotional connections and scolds him for taking them from him. Harry tests his device on the corpse, disintegrating it, but burns his finger. He may have become human enough for the device to kill him. When Liv visits the clinic to compare the severed foot with the recovered boot, Asta deduces that Harry killed the real Dr. Vanderspiegel. She confronts Harry and tells him they are no longer friends. Heartbroken, Harry activates his device. Lisa and David hold Max and Sahar hostage, only to be beaten and chased away by Ben and Kate. The agents then capture Ethan, having been told by Max that the alien was the town doctor, and Lisa leaves with General McAllister, abandoning David. Darcy comforts Jay after she confides in her that Asta is her mother, and they confront Jimmy, warning him to stay away from Asta before releasing the brakes on his parked truck. Harry finds his ship and plans to drop the device from space, but he sees Asta and Max held captive by government troops and fights to save them. Asta convinces Harry to spare humanity, and he leaves to dispose of his device in space. En route to his home planet, he finds Max has stowed away. And the film ends. Thanks for watching.